In this short video, I'm going to introduce the basics of animation in Cinema 4D. So make sure we're on the same page. In layout, we should be in the startup layout here. And to get started, let's make just a cube. And so far in this course, we've just been doing modeling. We haven't used the timeline down here, which is down here below the viewport, which I'm sure you've noticed by now. If you've done some animation, like for example in After Effects, some of this will be familiar to you, but Cinema 4D has a little bit different workflow. So if we look at the timeline, we can see it's cut up into 90 sections. That means there are 90 frames here, and we can see that's the default, and that 90 frames is indicated here, and we can change this number of frames to any number we want to. By default, they do 30 frames per second. So that for 90 frames, that means we can make a 3-second video by default. Now, if we go up into render settings, we've been making just so far just like one image, not putting a JPEG or a TIFF or whatever. If we look up in the render settings down here, frame range defaults to current frame, and that's what we've been using. If I hit the drop-down menu, I can see this option to choose all frames. So if I choose all frames, which I'm not going to do right now, but if I choose all frames, that means I can output this as a video, okay, or an MP4 or an MOV file, whatever. I'll just leave that at current frame rate for now. The other parameter up here that we really haven't paid attention to is this frame rate, and there's the 30. That means 30 frames per second, and we can change that to whatever we want to. However, in this course, we're not gonna be changing the frame rate. Okay, so I want to make this move. How do I do it? Well, I have to make. If you're not familiar with animation, what are called keyframes, I have to tell Cinema 4D the information for this object at a certain point in time. So right now the playhead is at 0. Okay, so I want to input to Cinema 4D. I want to say this is where I want this guy to start. Okay, so that's cool. I got the object where I want it. I got the playhead at 0. To make a keyframe, one easy way to do it, but I'm going to show you a different way later on, but the easy way to do it is to just hit this icon here, and it'll say record active objects. Okay, record the position scale, blah, blah, blah. And I'll click that, and in my timeline, I see this blue indicator here at 0, meaning that I just created a keyframe. Now the workflow, which I have written down for Cinema 4D, is basically this. You have to move the playhead, position the objects, or set the parameter, which I'll talk about in a little bit, and then make the keyframe. Well, you could say, well, you didn't move the playhead this time. Well, no, well, kind of, sort of. The playhead was where I wanted it. I wanted the playhead at 0, so I moved the playhead, positioned the object, and then I made a keyframe. All right, so let's say, okay, this is going to be a 3-second video. So at the end of 3 seconds, I want the cube to move along the z-axis. So I'll advance the playhead all the way to 90. Then I will move my object in there. I want it at the end of 3 seconds. I want it to be positioned there. Now my next part in the workflow is make a keyframe. So move the playhead, position the object, make a keyframe. So let me make a keyframe. Okay. Now when I hit the play button here, I just made the world's most boring animation. Okay, so you can see, there's also a thing called easing, E-A-S-I-N-G going on. It means it starts slow and ends slow. That's also default, which we can change, which we'll address in later videos. Okay, so just to make this more clear, suppose that halfway through this animation at the point 45, I want this position to change. So I'm going to move my playhead to where I want the event to occur. That's move the playhead. Okay, now I got to position the object. Then I'm going to make a keyframe, right? So let me go back here. So at the right in the middle of this 3-second animation, I'm going to move the object up here. And if you look carefully, you can see the timeline, which is down here indicated with this like bright blue weird looking line, has not changed. That's because I have to make a keyframe. So I position the object. Now I got to make a keyframe. And now when I hit the play button, what it does is it goes through this little, up and down motion here. Now, if I go into my object manager and I disable the view of the cube, this is the timeline I created. And there are like anchor points, which I can grab here, and I can move, move this timeline to anywhere I want to. This is not the recommended way to do it. Later videos will show you a better way to edit the path. Okay, but that's one way. I can grab these anchor points and move it. So let me put my cube back up there, and then hit the play button, and then I get that. Okay. What else I want to talk about in this video? Oh yes. All right. So we made this video using this icon. To make the keyframes. A recommended way to do it is to, let me show you here. If I scrub the playhead all the way to 0, and I go into my cube, and I go and select the cube in the object manager, and then hit the coordinates tab, you can see there's nothing news here. Everything is 0, 0, 0, just like it's supposed to be. But again, in this course, we have not seen this before, though. All these radio buttons are enabled. When I made that keyframe, what happened was Cinema 4D saved all this data at the 0 point at the timeline, right? So the recommended way to make a keyframe is actually to, what I would suggest anyway, is to edit your coordinates here. For example, let's say, let me back up. So, okay, I want this, I'm scrubbing the playhead back and forth. Okay, I want this to move, that's cool. Suppose I want it to spin as well. So by the time it gets to the middle of the animation, at the 1.5 second mark, or at 45, at the frame 45, I want this to spin 180 degrees. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to make a common mistake. All right. So so here's the parameter I want to change. My playhead is right in the middle of it at the frame 45. That's cool. Okay. Then remember, the next thing to do is position the object or change the parameter. So I'll go here and I'll say, all right, what I want to do is make this spin 180 degrees. Hooray. All right, now notice that this radio button turned yellow, which should mean something, but suppose I ignore that. Okay, like I'm a newbie, I don't know, so I've never done this before. Okay, cool, I changed it to 180, yippee, hooray for me. And then when I scroll the playhead, well, hey, nothing's spinning. Oh, what the heck happened here? Let me go back to the 45, frame 45, and look. Well, the 180 degree parameter I put in there is gone. It wasn't saved because I didn't properly make a keyframe. So here we go. I got the playhead where I want it. I'll change my parameter to 180. Just click anywhere off. Now, what this is saying is you change this parameter, but you didn't make a keyframe if it's yellow. Okay, if it's red, red is good for keyframe, all right? So I'm going to click on this. Now, when I scrub the playhead, lo and behold, it does work. It changes from when I go from 0 to frame 45, this guy spins 180 degrees, and then it goes from 180 degrees back to 0. So that is what I wanted. So whenever you change a parameter over here, make sure that you make a keyframe by clicking the radio button. Another thing, let me make a material real quick. This also works for materials, so if I make a red material and I'll apply it to my object, and let me scrub the playhead to 0. Okay, so teachers are repetitive, move the playhead, position the object, or set the parameter you want to animate, and then make a keyframe. So, okay, so I moved the playhead to 0. I want this to start out red and then change to blue. So over in the Object Manager, I'll click on the texture tag here, double click, and so what I want the color to change. All right. So this radio button is gray, just like we've seen this entire semester so far. I want to animate this parameter, so I'll click on that. So now I can animate the color. I was sure that the playhead was at 0. I made sure of that. So now, telling Cinema 4D look at 0, I want the color to be red. Okay. And let me advance the playhead all the way to 90. And let's say I want to, at this point, I want it to go to blue. So let me choose a blue color. Now, notice that the radio button is turned to yellow. Cinema 4D is telling me, hey, if you change this parameter, do you want to make a keyframe? If you want to, you better click this thing, Yes, I do. Okay, so I'm going to make that blue. So now when I scrub the playhead, it goes from red to blue, all right? And of course, anywhere within this timeline, I can, change the color to anything I want to. And like, so you can, for example, so like I'm going from 0 to 45, and this is what's happening. If I want to have something different happen at frame 24, for example, let's say I want the scale to change. Okay, so what I have to do, first of all, I know this is going to work, but make sure that the scale parameter, at 0 is ready to be animated. Okay, if these were blank, I would have to, just like I did with the color parameter, I would have to enable the radio button. But I'm at 0. All of these guys, this is telling me, yes, I can animate any of these parameters. So let me move it to, 22, frame 22, and I'll just make this just a little bit taller along the Y. So I'll go up to, let me go up to 2 here. Okay. And again, it's yellow, so Cinema 4D is saying if you want this to stick, click this. Okay, so there, that's cool. And then let me go to, I'll go, when I scroll the playhead, so the Y, it increases, the scale increases along the Y-axis, decreases back down to 1, okay, because I didn't change the parameter there. And let's say I want to go from 1 to I'll scrub it all the way to 90, and I'll increase this to 3, let's say. And I gotta enable that. So this is, let me hit the play button. There's my 3-second animation in all its glory. So the long story short, first of all, any parameter that has a radio button on it, whether it's on an object, even oddly enough, you can animate how many segments. You can animate the size, which we just did, but you can animate the segments of an object. You can animate the type of fillet an object has. It's a really, I don't know if that would have any application. What would it do? But that's something there. But and also like in any anything within a material that has a radio button can be animated. You can increase the illumination or decrease the illumination, etc., etc. But mostly what you're going to be dealing with is the path of the object. In other words, typically, mostly, you're going to be dealing with changing the coordinates of an object. So that's Cinema 4D animation in a nutshell, and just so this burns into your brain cells, move the playhead, position the object, then make a keyframe. That's your workflow.